Welcome, everyone. It's the 1st of December. Where did 2025 go? This is a work session of the Billings City Council. Our procedures for a work session are a little more informal than our regular business meeting. For anybody who hasn't been here before, it's mostly to have discussion about possible future action. So the City Council doesn't make binding decisions, although we might give direction to staff at our work session. There's a copy of our agenda back by the door. If anybody does not have one and would like one, we have two items on our agenda for tonight. First, the redevelopment of 802 Yellowstone, that property. And then second, talking about aggressive traffic and noise initiative brought by Councilmember Ripsis. We'll have an opportunity for public comment on items either on our agenda or not at the beginning and also at the end. And then when we get to each item, there'll be an opportunity for public comment on that item. Unless you've got to leave, I would recommend if you're here to comment on either of those items that you wait until we get to that item, and we'll make sure you've got an opportunity to comment on those items when we get to them. But if you've got to leave before that, we want to give you an opportunity at the very beginning of the meeting as well. Before we go to public comment on items not on our agenda, Chris, I'll just say or ask if you've got anything in the way of preliminary items.
I do, Mayor. I've actually got half a dozen things. Before I get to my list, though, I would like Debbie to give an update on the Mary Street intersection. I know there've been a lot of questions on it and some people in the audience. So if we could start with Debbie there and then, yeah.
Okay. Just got to wait for a minute.
Yep.
Okay, Mayor and Council, I wanted to give you a quick update on Mary and Bitterroot. We've had lots of conversations and there's been lots of news and conversations in the public about it. So I wanted to kind of tell you where we were. The city, the county, and the state got together right after the first accident when we were notified. And the state did a study in a week and a half, which is pretty crazy. The state did a warrant study for a stop sign. It does not warrant, given the traffic characteristics at that corner, even with the recent crashes, still does not warrant a four-way stop. So what we did is we got together with the county and we came up with a handful of things we're going to implement this week. So the city purchased and is going to install edge-lit stop signs. So I don't know how many of you guys have seen those, but edge-lit stop signs are hard to miss. They flash at you at night. It's pretty bright. We had them down here on the 22nd when 2nd and 3rd turned into one-way to two-way streets. There was flashing edge-lit signs, and they're very bright. So we're going to install those this week. And then the county is going to install stop signs on the other side of each leg. So I think you've probably seen county intersections, state intersections that have stop signs on both sides. They're going to install those on the opposite sides. So that's what the county is doing. They're going to put reflectivity up on all the posts, all the signs, everything in the intersection. We're going to paint new stop bars. This weather might be a little bit of a problem for us this week, but we're going to paint all new stop bars and kind of liven up all the paint in that area. And then the two things that were in the study to consider were rumble strips and the flashing ball type red ball that's on top of the stop signs. Those are really distracting and disruptive to the neighbors. Rumble strips are loud. MDT doesn't usually put them in residential areas. That would have to be something the residents talk to us about, and we'd meet with them, and they would just have to say, we want rumble strips instead of peace and quiet, really. And the other thing is the red ball with the flashing, that house on the corner would just have a terrible experience with that flashing in their house all the time. So we want to try these. I think it's going to make that intersection much more visible. The stop ahead signs, the stop signs, all of it should be more visible. So we should get that installed this week, and we'll look at it from there. So, yeah.
Debbie, you said that it didn't meet the warrant threshold for a four-way stop. What is that threshold, and how far off was the intersection?
So there are a handful of different warrants for stops. The one that got the closest is the crash, and it's still a couple short. I will make a caveat with that. I have not gotten the data from each intersection crash yet. if the characteristic of the accident itself would be avoided during, due to certain installation of signal or stop sign or something like that, it can still meet a warrant. It's a little more of a subjective warrant with that, but we're still trying to get that. Chief St. John called the Highway Patrol and tried to get that data. We should get it tomorrow. So that still is out there, but with what we know about the accidents, they blew stop signs. So blowing a stop sign two-way, blowing a stop sign it still may not give it the right. Yeah.
But so other than crashes, what are the other sort of metrics? Were they close on any of them?
No. So normally a four-way stop, you have to have pretty consistent legs. So Mary would have to have almost the same amount of traffic as Bitterroot.
Okay.
There's other things. That's the big one. You look at it peak hour, you look at it peak day, that kind of thing. Didn't meet any of those volume warrants at all.
Okay. And then my last question is, as this whole project moves towards completion, do you anticipate traffic patterns changing? Are things going to get better, worse as we move towards completion? How does this project unfold in your mind?
So MDT actually did address that, and I will send this report out to all of you tonight. I was just trying to finish up putting our comments into it to let you know what we were doing. But MDT did address that a little bit and talk about let me see what it says here. The planning level concept for this intersection is a two-way. As of the time of the writing, they anticipate construction on the final segment in approximately 5 years. So this is going to be this way for a little while. I did notice that if you go to, this is probably information you don't need, but if you go to Google Maps, it doesn't take you on Mary. If you go to Apple Maps, it does take you on Mary. So I don't know how to change that if anybody does. Yeah. I mean, really the goal is to stay on, the bypass. And so it was interesting to me that one had it and one didn't, but I don't know how to get that out. If anybody does, let me know and we can try to get that out of the directions. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Bernice?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Debbie, one of the things I understand is the crash data, they're between the city is separate than the state. It's all highway. So when you're talking about they looked at the crash data, did they combine both city crash data and highway patrol crash data?
They did.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Anything else for Debbie? Don't see anything. Thank you.
Yep.
Back to Chris.
Yes, Mayor and Council. So calendars. I want to get some things on your guys' calendars. So first up is for the outgoing mayor and council members. A week from today, so next Monday morning we've been doing orientation with the new group from 8 to 10 a.m. on Mondays. If you're available, we would like you to consider joining us this coming Monday, the 8th, to have a conversation. A couple of basic, simple questions. What wisdom would you share after being on the council? What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started your time? So that's for Monday the 8th, 8 a.m., 8 to 10. And I can have Winnette send a reminder out too. Also that day, we will be hosting our finalists for Public Works Director. And in this room from 4:45 until 5:20 or so before the council meeting, any of you want to come in and meet him, have a conversation, it's just going to be a casual setting. There's processes throughout Monday and Tuesday of next week, but that's an opportunity for you guys to meet him. There won't be anything formal during the council meeting, but I thought it was important to get some feedback from you guys, as well as for him to watch the council adopt the capital improvement plan and kind of go through that process so that Tuesday, when we're in interviews, we can have a more in-depth conversation about some of the things that are going on and opportunities and challenges in the community. Next date is it right in here. Yep, we were going to do it next door, but the EOC is already booked. So we're going to use just this council chamber space. Tuesday, December 16. So also in this room, our mid and upper managers work. So this is also for the outgoing 6. They had an opportunity to meet with all the new ones several weeks ago. I put it in the weekly. We'd like to invite the outgoing to attend that meeting from 10:30 to about 11:15. And again, share your wisdom, feedback, perspective with mid and upper management as to ways that we can be better, how we can be successful going forward. So I'll get you more information there. So we got 2 events on the 8th, next Monday, 1 on Tuesday, the 16th. For the council members who are remaining and the new ones, I shared with them this morning, we have on pencil Dan Clark coming on Monday, February the 2nd. He'll spend some time with the 6, but also when we get him to town, it's a great opportunity to have him do some stuff with the full council from the local government center, as well as possibly to invite our other boards to get a refresher on ethics and things of that nature. So February 2 is a date out there a little bit. And then last is kind of an FYI, under the circumstances that the county is in, dealing with animals, the situation east of town, I have signed, but will ultimately be looking for your ratification for a short-term lease with the county to use our current animal shelter space for that situation. So technically, it's a lease. It needs to be approved by you guys, but it was not ready to go. So it'll be on the consent agenda for the 15th for you to ratify my signature there. And with that, Mayor, that covers everything kind of in preparation for actual agenda items for this evening.
Very good. Question, Councilor Esplin?
Yep.
Very good. Anything else for Chris on that? Don't see anything. So, very good. We'll move ahead with our agenda for the evening then. First item up is public comment on all items. Again, you'll have an opportunity for public comment on the items themselves if you can wait, but if you can't, feel free to come to the podium. We just ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Tell us your name and address if you're comfortable with your address. Is there any public comment at this point? Any public comment at this time? Seeing none, okay. Well.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. A nice Monday after the holiday. Everybody, I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving and with family and friends. As I was making my
Paul,
way
if you just say your name.
I apologize. My name is Paul Clark, Southside. As I was making my way around the downtown area, I noticed the traffic and its parking, which is in total disarray and chaos because you can't get people to not get used to parking next to curbs because we have bike routes. But when it's bikes like this, it's a double park. I thought I was in Detroit there for a little while. That's one. What did we do with the waterworks and all the public that seems to be still in disarray about the bill? And I was here for when you said, if they don't pay their bills by December, we're going to send out bills anyway. So you still have people that are outraged over $2,000 to $4,000 monthly bill when they usually had maybe $80, $90 bill. Get back to the south side. Streetlights. I'm going to harp that forever until I get an answer from someone. Tell me why we don't have streetlights past 5th Avenue South in the South Side Triangle. Another thing is people walking to family services for food. When they get there, it'd be awful nice if they had their food, they can get on a bus stop. Gee, no bus stop. Some reason it's hard to get a bus stop at family services. Police patrols. Only time I see a policeman come by is when he is boot scooting across on State Avenue or 1st Avenue South. Come on down South 32nd. Come on down South 31st. Rumble stripes. I heard the problem about Mary and Bitterroot. Rumble stripes work. People, I was a truck driver for 40 years. There's nothing worse than all of a sudden hearing a rumble stripe and you wake up real quick and you dawn on you that you've got to bring it down. You've got to shut it down. Now, the people that live in that rumble stripes, absolutely. Is it a nuisance? Of course it is. But guess what it does? Saves lives. The Yellowstone animal shelter, we're still in disarray. I heard you say we're going to lease some property from the county. Well, that's fine. But you still have to solve a problem about people that are animal farms, dog farms, cat farms, that you investigate, then you confiscate. Now you've got animals in a white canvas tent. Number 6, of course, my forever nemesis, the sugar factory. How lovely is that smell when we change from white sugar to brown sugar to molasses? I'm a lifetime resident. I know what them smells are. It's pollution. It's molasses. It's brown sugar. That's what I have. You guys, I'll be back. Welcome in the new council and the mayor. I'm glad to see him starting to show up. Thank you. God bless.
Very good, thank you. Other public comment, is there any other public comment at this time? Before we close the public comment period, any public comment? No one is standing up, no one's coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period, move on to our first item, redevelopment opportunities for 802 Yellowstone. And Wyeth, I assume you are leading the parade here. And council, I'll just remind everybody as always to speak into your microphone so that people on KTV or on the Community 7 TV can hear us and others in the room can hear us as well.
Can hear me on this one? Yeah, I can hear that one going. Okay. Very good. Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, actually excited this evening to bring this item to you. This is a very positive story that's been years and years in the making. So we're really glad of where we're at this point with the project and the property. So I'll walk you through that. And I wanted to also introduce, I have Code Enforcement Manager Tina Hoger next to me here, and then Park Director Wolter is also with us this evening. Community Development Manager Brenda Beckett is back there as well, and then also Parks Community Outreach Specialist Milron is here with us too. The reason I'm introducing them is this effort has been a combination of all those departments and divisions as we've worked through this to come to you tonight with some of the information. So they're here to help answer questions and such if needed. So really quickly, the city acquired this property in 2024, late 2024, after a long process and many years before that of code enforcement violations and issues, and finally ended up in court and acquired it late in 24. It is zoned N1 in this neighborhood. It's a very small property. It's only a little over 5,000 square feet, and it's very long and narrow. We utilized the Big Sky Economic Development manages the US EPA Brownfields program for the Billings area. We utilized that program to do the assessments for this to abate the property. We did a community outreach meeting as part of that process, the planning, and then we also, as you all approved many months ago now, a revolving loan fund to access cleanup funds and planning for that. And then we separately, the city did a community survey to reach out to, mainly to focus on people within 10 blocks of the property to survey them about what they would, both how they were responding to the fact that we were finally cleaning it up, and then also what do they want to see maybe in the future based on some information we shared with them. So that's all been part of this process up to date. That's a picture of the inside of the property before we got into the major abatement work. The demolition was a 2-week process in September. We had previously abated the asbestos, and the lead paint was removed through the process of demolition. The recycling, which I wanted to mention specifically because code enforcement, Tina's team, does this now on abatements all the time and saves the city money and also helps the property owners with offsetting the costs of some of the abatements. They took 21,400 pounds of metal out of this property before it actually got knocked down. There was a lot of stuff in there. Interesting stuff and scary stuff. That building still had the meat hooks hanging from the ceiling in there, and there was everything from a large tractor to a like a wood or coal burning stove. So anyway, a lot of stuff in there, but her team did a great job getting all that out before we got to the actual knockdown portion of the project. Just a couple pictures. This was the demolition happening. Unfortunately, the large tree had to be removed. That tree, although it looks great in the picture, the roots were down inside the foundation of the building. And so when we realized we were gonna have to take the foundation out, there was concern, and the city forester and part of Director Vulture's group helped us with that removal, but also that assessment that there was concern that after we took the foundation out, we might have problems with the tree coming down, not when we wanted it to. So anyway, that unfortunately had to be taken down as part of the project. Just a quick before and after from right before demolition to what it looks like today. We were also very fortunate. There is some infrastructure, some sidewalk improvements and work that will be needed, but we were fortunate we didn't have serious damage during the demolition for what was there. We thought we were gonna have some issues because the foundation was right up against the sidewalk in some areas, but they were able to avoid that. So one of the things that we moved into then and had discussions, like I said, internally and was part of the fuel for the community survey was redevelopment concepts with this property. The goal ultimately of having it be integral to the neighborhood again and not being the terrible property and nuisance that it had been. So there was the public meeting I mentioned that we did as part of the Brownfields program in early 25. We got some participation from the neighborhood there. We actually conducted that meeting here in this room. And then we got together with the code enforcement, community development, parks, and planning staff to talk about, what development concepts could be considered for the property and what could we put out there for further input. So we worked through that and we did the survey this summer with the neighborhood. I provided the whole survey to you in with the memo, but this is kind of the crux of it. We walked with them through housing, commercial, and like an open space community garden type of scenario, and really came up with those through the potential for funding something through a housing project, some kind of commercial or maybe one housing unit and small community store type of concept, and then open space community garden. As I said, the property is quite small and narrow, so it does have some challenges for development on the site. So that was part of what we were considering, but we wanted to give them some different ideas. So the way this is set up, actually, the green is no and the orange is yes. So what you see here is that the garden, open space was very popular. Housing was somewhat popular. Commercial, not so much at all from the neighborhood. We got 130 responses, and as I said, it was most of it, about 70% of the respondents were within the 10 blocks of the property. We did get some folks from outside that area who weighed in as well. So we sort of had the initial concepts and then we refined those, and that's what kind of gets to, as we get to tonight. We talked about, and this was our the internal discussions, the home and CDBG programs, funding potentially like citing a single family, modular home on the property, using the first time home buyer program for something like that. Part of the reason for the modular idea is cost. Even a modular unit on a property these days is $250,000 plus $1,000, and so that's something. We did that up in the Heights on Stefanich, and so we looked at that as a potential. But there's program challenges there, mostly related. Well, a couple different things. HUD first told us that from a CDBG standpoint, they wouldn't classify us being able to develop the property for new construction. And so we looked at having to say, okay, well, we would use our home program funds potentially to do that. And our home program funds right now are mainly tied up with the LB Lofts project that you saw not too long ago in the Heights and some of the projects we're doing. So we don't have a ready access to funding to be able to try to do something in that way. So that's a challenge. The private development approach is something that the city could consider. This is an interesting one because the city hasn't done something like this in terms of saying, okay, we have a property, we want to incentivize it somehow, and we're going to do an RFP and require you to this is what we want to see on the property. We want it built this way. We want this to happen, and basically make sure that in the end, the outcome is that we want it to contribute and be something in the neighborhood. And if you just sold it and put no parameters on it, who knows what you would get. And so you would have to do a very specific RFP type process. Haven't done those. That's something I think the city definitely we should be looking into in the big picture. And as part of the disposition of park property is obviously sort of a similar thing. But in this case, not something that we've really gotten into in that case. And again, like I said, small, limited property, not a lot of space there for maybe a unit or something like that. Small open space park, obviously that was positive from the parks, from the survey, and also Parks Department in our conversations with them about potential for something like that would be small. And then this community garden concept with open space, very positive, both survey, but also that way you've got funds that are having the community garden, you're actually having some of that paid in for people using the garden. And so then that helps offset the open space use type of the concept. So anyway, we looked at those and kind of went through and narrowed it down to really this idea of the open space / community garden concept due to the fact that we can leverage CDBG funding. We have funding that this council actually approved as part of the CDBG SEPTED funds in the last budget. We have funding that could be started right away to do some of the design and that work. And then you can also use CDBG for infrastructure for this type of open space community garden concept. So you could do utilities, water, some of the structure work that would be required on the property as part of that. So it could start quickly because we do have those funds in a more readily available way right now in terms of compared to the home program and the housing development side. And then the survey obviously was strongly supportive of that based on everything we got from the neighborhood when they were evaluating it and giving us their input. So staff's recommendation tonight is to obviously have the council consider all the information, but to consider moving forward with that small open space community garden concept based on what pretty much the things I've already said. It does provide a good gathering space for the neighborhood in addition to the garden piece of it. There's nonprofit opportunities for entities to run that community garden space. And so that's not like the parks operation wise, that would be a much more limited aspect. And that's why Director Wilcher and Mr. Milron are here also to talk to you about that. The low maintenance, like I said, because of the model for that and the small footprint. And then we'd be able to get started on something very quickly based on our funding availability for that type of a project. If we were to wait and consider the housing development option, we would be waiting until mid next year, give or take, to see where our funding position was based on the LB lofts and the projects we already have in the docket, to see whether then we would be able to secure funds there. And so that's puts this off. Kind of, we just are sitting on it. We're not doing anything. And there's also the concern that we still might not have the funding availability at that point. So that's a concern when we're also trying to encumber some of our CDBG funds with projects in the short term. So trying to balance that is definitely would be a challenge. Just show you, this was a concept that the park staff, put together just as an idea in terms of plot space. Again, this is much smaller than like the Amon Park Community Garden, which is 5 or 3 times larger. So this is a smaller concept, but basically with the plots, how it would face and with some benches and some other amenities along Yellowstone and 8th Street. And the way now with that, there is limited shade actually aside from some of the trees along the 8th Street side. It gets very good sun throughout the whole day. So it would be a pretty easy place for that type of activity to take place. So next steps is getting some input from you this evening on kind of where we go from here. And then we would begin to develop project depending on what, obviously if it was the open space community garden concept, fairly quickly, and then be back to you in terms with whatever steps were necessary as part of that process. in terms of if there was contracting or different things that would need to occur. But we'd get that figured out after we got some direction and potentially start that the summer of 26. So with that, happy to answer questions. And like I said, we got the rest of the group here to provide answers as well.
Why don't we just go around the table? We'll start down here with Councilmember Kennedy.
I'm not that many blocks away and I didn't receive a survey. But after talking to the people in the area, they're not as big on a community garden. They would like it grass. They'd like the curbs fixed over there and the sidewalks. And it could be a gathering place or whatever. It's too small for an apartment or housing or whatever. It's just a small section there. I just, looking at it and after talking for many years with the folks in the area, that they're happy to have it down. They do like it open now. And they would just like the sidewalk and the curb fixed, and a grassy area would be good. The biggest problem with a community garden is someone is going to have to take care of it. And for someone to come in and take care of it, we have a community garden around the corner from us. And a lot of it just sits there. Weeds and everything else. And so a lot of folks said they'd like grass. The other thing is, we're hitting some tough times with the city. And if you're going to add something else in the park budget, where does that funding come from? And so maybe it would be better just to put it up for sale and see who wants to buy it. But those are the things that I have heard in my neighborhoods over there. And they're very pleased with Tina because she really pushed this project going forward. But they're not really big on any big development or anything right there. Just put some grass down, water it, and it'll be fine.
Very good. Councilmember Leonard, anything? Councilmember Shaw, anything?
Yeah. Gavin, I got a couple questions for you. Can you help me understand this? I feel like we are constantly saying we don't have money to maintain our parks. When I saw that Parks was supportive of this, I was like, what is going on? So walk us through what you're thinking in terms of the maintenance, because that is, I'm really struggling with why we would kind of build something new, a new park in a new area, when we really don't have money to do that citywide.
So, Mayor and Councilwoman, that's a great question. So the model would be very similar to what is out at Amon. Okay, the Amon Community Garden out there, all of those plots or beds would be sold. Okay, all of the work out there in the way of maintenance is done by the volunteers out there. Okay, there's not zero cost because wherever we put in at some point would need to be replaced in the way of the beds themselves, or if there's a fencing around it or things of this nature. I can say quite reasonably that it would be a very nominal cost up front. Again, you have the long-term stuff that you have to be mindful of.
Okay, so you're not thinking of like trying to establish a park maintenance district for that area, or
No.
that's not part of
No.
the conversation?
No.
Okay. And then, Mayor, if I can, I have a question
Sure.
for Wyeth. Okay.
Sure.
Wyeth, my opinion is I agree with you. We're going to need to come up with a process for disposing of this property, doing some kind of city RFPs. Why not use this as a test balloon and just see how it goes? And then if we get back things that are unfavorable, it could still become a garden or an open space, right? I mean, I don't know where the funding is in terms of when we would lose it federally.
Councilmember Shaw and Mayor and Council, certainly, yeah, this process that I was talking about is something that the city needs to test out. I guess looking at this property and the challenges that it has, given the size and stuff, I would anticipate we could have some challenge, and we could go through that and set it all up, no problem, or not no problem, but get that all done, and we might not have any real response, I think. And I guess the key to this too is that the city would be needing to think about incentivizing that, like, the property, giving it or, providing it at some reduced amount. It's not that it's really super valuable. I mean, it's a very small property. So whatever that edge is to say, hey, we'd have to figure out how we put that out there and say, we want to see this kind of development, and we're this is how we're going to incentivize it. So it could certainly be done. I'm not sure it's the best example of where to try that right out of the gate, only because of the challenges and the physical size of it. But yeah, that's certainly a consideration. I think the part also with that is, if we did all that and then there was no good response or no response that was satisfactory to the city, then we would be back to saying, okay, do we look at doing the community, the open space or community garden at that point? We can do that. We're definitely, with the CDBG funds and stuff, we're trying to juggle kind of timing of that. And so by the time we went all through that and it was later next year, I don't know. We'd have to obviously at that point assess what we had and how we could proceed.
Okay, I know everyone keeps saying it's a small lot, and it is, but there's a lot of housing in that area on very small lots like this. I mean, it really could be leveraged for housing, even though it is small. And I don't know all the additional challenges, but just wanted to ask those questions, throw that in there. Thanks.
Quick question for Wyeth, just simple one, and then one for Gavin and or Jake. Wyeth, have we had any developers or interested parties at least kicking the tires, making inquiries, because it's been known for a long time that the property is going to be available?
Mayor and council, not that I am aware of.
Okay.
We've heard, I don't think.
So, and then the question for Gavin or Jake. For me, it's hard to turn my back on the fact that 80% of the neighbors said that they supported or strongly supported it being a garden/park area. But we're going to be dependent, or it would be dependent upon volunteer labor, especially with the garden scenario. And that requires a group. In the Amon Park, you've got an organization at Songbird, which has been a fabulous community garden. There's a really strong neighborhood group. Who would that be in this case? I have a hard time seeing turning it over to just one or two neighbors. There would have to be a real organized group. Does that exist, or what are the odds of that coming into existence? Personally, I would think we would want to make that a condition before going down that path. And then maybe you could also comment on the cost. You said it wouldn't be substantial cost, but fencing, you've got to get water to it. Maybe you need to get electricity to it if you need lights or cameras or something like that, but certainly water. And then signage, I think, would be an important part, donor signage, as well as some attractive signage in the gates. So cost and group.
Mayor and council, all good questions. So as far as, I'll take them kind of in reverse order. The infrastructure costs, I would defer to Wyeth and his team with the CDBG funding, curbing, fencing, water, sidewalk, all of that could be part of that package and that funding. Again, you're looking long-term then to address those costs 5, 7, 10 years down the road. As far as a group, I would highly stipulate that we should have a group that is willing to undertake this. As to any specifics, I would defer to Jake if he has talked to any groups at this point. Again, this is very high level, so do we have any groups that you've talked to? So one thing I can say with the Amon one, again, this is not quite a apples to apples comparison. You're talking about 15,000 square feet out at Amon, 5,000 square feet here. We do turn away quite a bit of gardeners every year. That this could be a second choice for them. To my knowledge, we don't have a problem with the upkeep at Amen in the way of the volunteers doing things, coming together, coordinating, whatever efforts. Again, that's not an apple to apple comparison here, because we don't know what group would be interested in quote unquote adopting this space. But that would also be part of what we'd have to make sure we do.
Okay. Councilor Boyat?
I used to live in the neighborhood. This sounds, you may not like this, but I think we've wasted a lot of time on a project that we solved the problem. The problem was getting rid of the building. Let's just move on with this thing. Wyatt, I wonder how many hours you've spent on 5,000 square feet instead of doing something else. I just see that this is a waste of our time. My personal thing is I think we should just put a sign up and see if we get a buyer and move on. We have enough property we're trying to get rid of in the parks land now, not adding more to it and more work. When everybody gets a chance, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for direct staff.
We'll keep going that direction.
If I could just, if I might just respond, because I think it's important and it's called out in the financial portion of the memo. But one of the things that we have to be cognizant of here is that the revolving loan fund that we received through the program to do the work we've done, if we're doing something that contributes as a community benefit and is sort of community oriented, we have pretty much carte blanche, and there's criteria, but carte blanche to not have to repay any of the loan that the revolving loan that we've incurred to do the work on this property. If the council were to just put it up for sale with no, criteria or strings attached, we would end up having to pay back as much as I don't know what we would get for this property, but it would have to go back into that loan. So the loan, it's about $80,000.
Yeah. And that number again was 80,000?
Yeah.
Around
Correct.
80,000?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll keep going. Councilor Bernice?
Thank you, Mayor. I was wondering the same thing as far as why we were looking for a development plan on this, because I prefer to see the property sold. I mean, it's a small lot, but as was mentioned, there's a lot of small lots in there, smaller than that have houses, duplexes on them. So, my preference would be to see us do something with housing. I think you can get a duplex townhome pre-modular put in there for a little over 200,000, plus the foundational work and stuff like that. You'd have to add that too. But I think those are the kind of things that we should be pursuing. I don't think I would support a garden unless there was a PMD to support it. I mean, there has to be someone there who's going to take care of it. I don't want to give something else to the Parks Department. And so I would prefer to see, it sold. And if we can get 80,000 for it and recoup the money that we've done, I don't know how much. It'd be nice to know exactly how much this cost us in both time with your department, Tina, and less what we got back in recycling and the loan. If that's we can get that for it, great. If not, then maybe we'd have to look at redevelopment at that time. But my preference would be just get it back on the market and let someone do something with it.
Very good. And if I could just ask for clarification from Wyeth or whoever, if we sell it and you get less than the loan amount, just revolving loan fund forgive the difference. So it's not like we would trigger, if we sold it for 40,000, we would have to come up with the additional 40,000 to pay off the entire loan. Is that correct? They just forgive that any deficit.
Mayor and council, yeah, our understanding is that's correct. It would be whatever was recouped would have to go toward the loan.
Okay,
in
just
that
wanted
case.
to make sure of that.
I appreciate that, because then there wouldn't be any financial obligation to us if we sold it for 40,000, even though, yeah. So I think, in fact, actually is a stronger opinion to then actually just sell it, get it on the open market so someone else can develop this.
Okay.
One quick question. I'm sorry, I thought I read in this, is this N2 zoning? I don't recall. I couldn't find it again, but
It's
N1.
N1.
It is
Yeah.
N1. Okay, then perfect. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Rowan?
So I just want to make sure, I don't know why, if you want to answer this, or Chris, if you want to answer it. If we were to put it on the market, as has been said, and I think ultimately what I agree with, could the neighbors come together and say, listen, all we've got is 5,000, but we'd like to buy it and make it a community garden? Is our RFP process for disposing of property like this, does it require us to take the best bid, the highest value, or do we have some latitude to make it clear that we're open to innovative concepts.
The rule changes that we made just a couple of years ago give you quite a bit of
That's what I thought.
flexibility for
Okay.
public benefit.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with what's been said. I don't see the value in taking on a new project. So I would like to see just sort of, let's move forward with transferring this property into other hands. When I look at the survey, and Wyeth, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it looks like community garden ranks high early, but then when we get down to question 13, one single family home on that property is ranked just as high in terms of value as a community garden. So it looks like the survey results are a little open to conversation, as surveys usually are. So I think it's worth it just to see what's out there in the marketplace.
Ms. Roger?
I want to point out the fact that Parks did not come to us asking for this property, and I think that's an important distinction. I appreciate the fact that you guys are being a team player and you're willing to try to handle something, because obviously the survey results are definitely indicating a strong interest in that. So you're just trying to make it happen. I appreciate that. I've had a lot of experience with community gardens. They are not low maintenance. They are messy. They're a hassle. There are a lot of issues that come up with that. And I love the fact that Amen Park Garden is not so much like that. One of the big issues that you run into is to compost or not to compost. And if you do not allow composting on that property, the plots tend to be left messy over winter. If you do allow it, you tend to get mice. And it's just, we have field mice, we're in Montana. And then field mice will bring in all sorts of other fun critters to try to track those down. So I like Councilmember Kennedy's idea about having grass, although I realize that's mowing, that's more maintenance, possibly a small flower garden or something if the neighbors wanted to maintain that, a smaller board that's taking care of that from those volunteers. I think they would get the same pleasure of having a community gathering spot, a place for their kids to play and things like that without all the work that gardens can actually be. And I want to point out the fact that in the Amen Park area, there are a lot of homeowners and renters that have much smaller properties. Even still, they don't have room for that. This is in single family areas where people do have small backyards. So they should be able to have their own garden if that's something that they're interested in. I feel like the community garden idea is more about community than anything else. So how can we make that happen without the potential pitfalls of a community garden? And I know this sounds like I'm very much against community gardens. I'm not. I'm a huge gardener. I love them. But also it's just recognizing you've got to have a really strong board team that works together really well. And I just hate to see that you guys having to arbitrate all the time and answer questions and things like that. But once again, circling back around, thanks for being a team player.
Ms. Versus?
Thank you, Mayor. Gavin, I feel like we just spent the better part of the last year looking at every single city property that we owned and saying, you know, we should have this or we shouldn't. And I don't want to speak for that committee, but I'd be hard pressed for us to think that we wouldn't have put this on the list of the ones that the city should dispose of. I think it should be housing. I mean, just point blank, I think, you know, the need for housing is significant enough. I see that narrow, wide lot, and so there could be 6 or 8 tiny homes on there, and say, Wyeth, what is our zoning on, what would we have to allow to have, you know, tiny homes, multiple tiny homes on a lot like that? I'm not sure if N1's the right one or not, but I think there are much better uses of this particular lot without putting that on the Parks Department. I do, like Councilmember Rogers just said, appreciate that you've kind of come with a solution and are supportive of that. But I think that's not something that would be in our long-term interest right now to get into. So I'd like to see us be more innovative and find ways to facilitate housing there without just kind of just putting on the market willy-nilly. I think should be our last option. You know, if we did that, I think we should ask the neighbors. First off, does the neighbor want to buy it? Because we've had some of those that have come up. If the neighbor wants to buy it, then great. If the neighborhood wants to come together and put a PMD type thing or an HOA together and maintain it and buy it, then that's great too. But I think those things should be kind of down the list, but I think we should be thinking in terms of how do we facilitate a project like this to get housing there? Because I think that's kind of a mandate that we have. It is city property and we should be using it to the greatest community benefit. And I just have a hard time thinking that that this particular plan is the right one right now.
Very good. Councilmember Gulick, and then we'll ask Councilmember Tidswell, who's with us online, if he has any questions as well. Councilmember Gulick?
I think most of y'all said a lot of things I wanted to say. And I think a lot of questions have been asked that I would otherwise ask. I agree with Tom in particular. I think that this would be great for housing. There are some really great houses just around the corner from where I live on North 31st. If you check out 1011 and 1015 North 31st Street, those are two houses that are on 37.5 foot wide lots. And they fit right in, they look great. They're architecturally very significant. So that's not even, they're not even tiny houses, but they are. I think, and you know, the modulars, there are good looking architectural ones that are around these days. It's possible to do that, and I think that neighborhood deserves them. You know, I think in terms of the surveys and the community garden coming out at top, it's a survey where there's not any consequences for it's like it's free. It's like it's no one even committing to actually having a plot and maintaining and taking care of it. It's them just saying, I'd like to have that rather than a neighbor who I maybe don't like, you know. So it seems like we're going in the wrong direction in terms of having a more productive lands, higher tax base to take care of the parks we do have. So I'm firmly in the housing corner.
Very good. Councilmember Tidswell, I don't know if you've got any questions, but if so, we want to give you an opportunity.
No, I actually agree with Tom on this. I think we should look at housing options and see where that goes. But I think that is the best, I guess, the best option for that lot.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Let's open up for public comment. See if there's anybody with us who would like to comment before we. Councilmember Shaw?
I just have a clarifying question for Wyeth, which is you'd mentioned if we just put it up for sale, having to pay back the loan. But if there is a conversation about for the community good, does housing fit within that? In which case we wouldn't have to pay back the loan? Can you clarify that for us?
Yeah, Councilmember Shaw, Mayor Council. Yes, there's some caveats. We'd have to look at exactly how we would craft that. But yeah, I mean, if we were been able to just go ahead and do a new single family unit on there through CDBG and then, you know, do a first time home buyer type of scenario, I think the answer is yes. That's pretty clear in terms of how we would be, because there'd be management and sort of control over like the benefit in that case, not just put it up for sale and, you know, who knows what you get. And then it's, you know, that's the difference, I think. So we would be needing to look at if we were going to do a housing scenario and do some kind of RFP, there would have to be some language and things in there to try to tie it back to that as much as possible. And then obviously if we were going to wait and look at whether we might use home and CDBG next year sometime, then that would work, but you'd be waiting to see what was going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Roy.
I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, though. Nothing constrains us from an RFP that says we will give priority to housing projects followed by X followed by Y, right? I mean, we don't have to just say whatever comes through the door, right?
Correct. No, if you did the RFP, you would be being very specific about what you wanted and see if
very
anyone,
clearly what gets ranked higher than others in terms of a bid, right?
depending on what you were asking for.
And does that then meet the public benefit criteria that Councilmember Shaw was talking
No,
about?
I think for the most part, I believe that would work
Okay.
because we would be specifying, something that would benefit the community and the city in that way. But we'll have to navigate that a little. We've been continuing to check with BSED on making sure that we're understanding that. So that'd be something we'd look into further.
But worst case, we're out $80,000, right?
Yeah, plus, about another 50,000 in that we've used for code enforcement that's been part of this process. We did asbestos abate. We did some a bunch of pre-work. So we're out. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Further questions before we go to public comment? Councilor Brittany?
Just to follow up on Tom's point, because this was discussed a little bit before the council meeting about tiny homes. Wyeth, what would it take, to put tiny homes on that property? Does our code currently allow something like that? Or is that something we have to zone change? Because I was interested in on there or not. It actually could fit 5 or 6 or tiny homes there.
Councilmember Neese and Mayor and Council, I would have to look to that further. Currently the zoning that we allow tiny homes, but you're still tied to what the zoning is. And so in this case, it's 2 units.
Okay.
So yeah, if we were going to do something and allow more, we would have to look at the zoning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further questions? Councilmember Kennedy?
Interested in tiny homes. The neighborhood, if it's going to take a year or 2 years or 3 years for you guys to decide what you want to do, and if it doesn't get put up for sale or whatever, please plant some grass and get rid of the mud hole. And the other thing is, they're not ready for a community garden. You could bring in any group around and things like that. That's not what the neighborhood is looking for. They're looking for something really in their neighborhood. We have a tough time getting the Central Terry group together. So for people to come together and try to say, we're going to do this community garden or whatever, it's not going to happen. So if you're not going to do anything, let's just plant it in grass. If you are going to put it up for sale, then put it up for sale. If it doesn't sell or whatever by the spring, please plant it in grass so at least it's not a big mud hole when it rains. Because the people in the neighborhood are very sensitive to, they're not interested in the tiny homes concept. Maybe we could come out to one of your districts and try that and see how the neighborhood likes it. But right in that neighborhood, they'd be very happy just having grass and leaving their neighborhood the way it's been. Thank you.
So now I have a question for Gavin about grass. Councilmember Kennedy makes an important point. We never know how long these things take. If you're planting grass for a park, you want smooth, you want rocks removed, you want maybe some good topsoil down, you want to put in irrigation line, you want to bring water to it. That's a whole different deal, and it's a permanent infrastructure. But just throwing down some natural grass seed here in the fall so that something comes up, that's cheap, easy, not a long-term fix as a park for sure, but at least would help the neighborhood if there's a delay. Is there any reason we wouldn't want to at least get some basic grass seed down on it this fall? Now's the time to plant, or in the spring, but now, could we at least do that?
Mayor and Council, very good question. It's not my space to make that decision. It's code enforcement space.
Aha. Okay, Tina, you heard the question.
I guess if I could just, before
Wyatt
Tina answers or adds to the question, I guess, again, if you're planning for this to, when you said take a while, so depending on the scenario, it could take very little time, which is why we weren't planning to do further improvements to it, through the winter, because we were going to be starting to do something if it was going to be park or open space in the spring. If that's not the case and we are moving toward the housing scenario, et cetera, then yeah, I think we would be looking at least, by the spring, figuring out something to do temporarily like you're talking about. But then that would be, something that we would have to look at currently with code enforcement, who's taking care of it. We're taking care of the property. We're taking care of the walks. So that would be, and Tina can chime in, but we'd be doing sort of a short-term improvement and then continuing with this other process.
I don't know, there's a lot that we have to decide here. It's just my recommendation, and I'm sure Councilmember Kennedy's, that something be done if there's not a very short-term solution here. And you never know. As long as it's cheap, and throwing down grass seed's pretty doggone cheap. So anyway, let's open it up for public comment. Do we have anybody from the public, especially from the neighborhood, who would like to be heard on this? Future Councilmember Aguirre.
Hi there, I'm Amy Aguirre, Ward 3. I just had a random thought during this conversation is maybe approach Habitat for Humanity if they'd be interested in purchasing that lot. And it would still solve the housing issue as well as be part of that first-time home buyer experience as well. So that's just my thought on that.
Very good. Anybody's got any contacts? Let them know. Any other public comment? Any other public comment on this item number 1? No one's standing up, no one's coming forward, so we'll close the public comment period. Now back to council. Councilmember Boyette, you had reserved your motion spot.
I mean, I can't believe how much time we spend on this lot. I
An
think that
hour, that's how much time, 1
And-
hour.
And that the planning department and code enforcement already had an idea what they wanted to do. I'd like to we have enough property, we need to get rid of property. I'm gonna make a motion that we direct staff to put the property up for sale. If it doesn't sell within a reasonable amount of time, then come back with the information of what they've received and we'll go to Plan B. But let's move on and get rid of this piece of property. Thank you.
Second by Councilmember Neese. Councilmember Boyd, I'll just raise the obvious question. I did not hear any conditions on the sale. Specifically with the goal of qualifying for a public benefit to help us avoid paying back the loan. There was discussion to that effect. Is that in the intent of your motion? Put it up for sale for, or direct staff to move in the direction, putting it up for sale to the highest bidder for fair market value, or something else?
I think we should start the highest bidder to start with. That should be the first thing. Let's say in 2 months, 3 months, it doesn't sell, then we go to a Plan B of RFP or workforce housing or low-income housing. But let's get out of the business of owning property that we don't want. As Councilmember Neese said, we got a lot of land we've been trying to get rid of. Let's move on.
Okay, that was the motion, Councilmember Neese. I assume that was your second. So with
Yeah,
that clarification,
and I believe actually selling it to the highest bidder is a public benefit because we've already spent a lot of money in code enforcement. That's going to help repay some of that. It's going to go back into that. So I think it is a public benefit to sell it for the highest bidder. Now, what the highest bidder does with it after that, we can, that's planning and they'll work with them to build it. And I agree with Tom. I hope it goes to housing because that's what it needs to be. But it'll be a public benefit. I don't know if that's good enough to meet the requirements of the loan, because we're selling it for the most amount of money to repay code enforcement for what they've spent on removing this property, this blight from the neighborhood.
Okay, discussion now on the motion made and seconded. Councilmember Shaw.
So I'm going to vote against this because I just firmly believe if we're going to go down this road, we should use this as a test balloon for a city RFP process that incentivizes housing. And so I'm not interested in just let's sell to the highest bidder. I would like to see that process unfold. So that would be a motion I would make if this fails, because I think that that's really important. And I don't want it to become, well, a parking lot, for instance, or something like that. I think it needs to be something that is for the community good. And I believe housing would fit that, but I don't think this is going to get us there.
Okay, very good. Further discussion on the motion. Councilmember Ipsos?
Yeah, I completely agree with Kendra there. I would just prefer to do the RFP first, and then if we don't get good responses on the RFP, then just open up to the market to see who else might want to buy it. But I think it's up to us to get the most public good out of it as we can, and I'm not sure that just an open sale is the best way to do that.
Very good. Further discussion, Councilmember Gulick.
I also agree with what Councilmember Ripsis and Shaw said, proposed.
Okay, Councilmember Rogers.
My only concern with that, and I hear what you guys are saying, I agree in principle with that, but my concern with that is we've already spent a lot of staff time and effort on this issue, and at some point you fish or cut bait.
Okay, further discussion on the motion, Councilmember Kennedy?
I'm gonna support the motion. I think it's, I think we go out and we see if there's any interest or not. I think a lot of you are second guessing the neighborhood. So let's put it up and see where it goes.
Okay, any further discussion? I guess I'll vote no, not because I really oppose, but I just think it'd be worth us looking into what the definition of this public benefit is. I'd hate to have a situation where we're trying to get maximum fair market value, and let's call it $40,000. And if we knock $10,000 off that, we'd be able to keep that money. But because we got fair market value, we have to give it all back and pay off that loan. It just doesn't make economic sense without doing that investigation. But I'm not opposed to disposing of the property for all the reasons that have been stated, unless the neighborhood comes forward with a great organization and a real commitment to take responsibility. Then I think we should go back to that as a possible option. But that's really up to the neighborhood. I think it's telling that we don't have anybody from the neighborhood here with us tonight. So that's important as well. So any other discussion before we have the vote on Councilmember Boyette's motion? Okay, so if in favor of Councilmember Boyette's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
If
Aye.
opposed, very good. If opposed, say nay. Nay. I think the nays were myself, Councilmember Shaw, Councilmember Ripsis, and also Councilmember Gulick. All other council members voting in the affirmative. Everybody's with us tonight, so that was 7 in favor, 4 against. So the motion passes. I think that clarifies that for now and concludes item number 1. So we'll move on to item number 2. This is the aggressive traffic and excessive noise initiative. Chief St. John will get settled at the table here on the view, and we will hear from council member or from the chief. Councilmember Ripsis, though, this was your initiative, so I'm gonna, before we turn it over to the chief, I'll just ask you and also I guess Chris if you've got anything in the way of introductory comments before we hand it over to the chief.
I would offer that to Tom as the initiative. So.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think we need too much on the introduction here tonight. What I do hope, though, and reading through the staff memo, I appreciate Chief's comments in his report detailing the traffic survey that they did, that perhaps there are some things that we can look at from an engineering or design standpoint. My hope tonight is that we don't lay it all on Chief's doorstep and say he's got to do this on his own, because I think there's a limit to how much enforcement can do given the realities of our situation. And so I would hope that we end up more at a 50-50 kind of conversation between what can we do for enforcement and what can we do from an engineering design standpoint, because I think they have to work together. But we'll see how the conversation goes, and just kind of looking forward to at least having the public conversation. I will say that as we were starting the meeting tonight, I got a voicemail from somebody saying that they just watched the Q2 segment. And Debbie, I'm not sure, I'm going to guess that probably you weren't quoted very accurately or something, but apparently they said you didn't think that the noise levels were too high, and it's not a concern. So I hope that's a total mischaracterization of what happened. Wouldn't be surprised if that's how it came across in the article, in the news report. But I know for a fact that none of us believe that that's the case. So I'd like to just make sure that we really focus both on the aggressive driving as well as certainly the noise issues around across the city.
Before we jump in, it looks like Councilor Rapslider would like to.
Yeah, and thanks. I just wanted to ask Councilman Rupsis just for some clarification and framing around this conversation, because I mean, if we're going to talk about speed limits and road designs and like all of the things, we're going to bounce all over the map on this conversation. So my understanding, and I guess I'm asking you to clarify if I'm off, my understanding was the initiative was to talk about aggressive driving and noise issues, not necessarily, speeding in general, but street racing and the noise and aggressive driving and those types of things that we see on some of our corridors. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. And certainly this is something that we could spin on for many hours. And I know you would love to be here for
I'd
many,
love
many
it.
hours
Yeah.
tonight.
10 o'clock would be great.
We're not going to solve anything tonight. What I would hope, and I certainly won't be here as the next council will make a lot of these decisions in helping staff get through this, but I hope we don't have another summer like what we have experienced this past summer, and it seems to be escalating every year. So what I want to see is that by next summer, we've got a program in place to deal with this, to prevent it, to get it going strong in the other direction, where we don't have people constantly calling us, emailing us, complaining about this issue. So tonight, I think, is really just hopefully setting us on the path to define that, it'll be quiet here for a little bit because the streets are icy and we don't have a lot of racing and, a lot of noise when it's like this. But by the time we get to the spring again, we need to have something in place.
And Mayor, if I may, the only thing I'd add to that is we are in the midst of a transportation corridor study in which we're talking about how these corridors should be shaped and what should go where and how we're shaping up our arterials and collectors and neighborhood roads. The design element conversation is really what that group is working on through Public Works and Planning. And we'll be spending a lot more time after the first of the year on that. So there's a group working on that currently from council and with Public Works. So keep that in mind as we're talking about the rest of this. And, Tom's been sitting on that. We're working on that part. So.
Yeah, and I'd concur with that. What I would say though is I don't think the degree to which our design challenges are encouraging this type of behavior has really kind of ingrained itself within our thinking. We just saw a presentation about Rimrock Road and how that design is coming through, and it's going to be more of the same. We're creating another speedway there. So I think we need to get ahead of this and start really pushing that harder than what we have. And I do appreciate that we're in the middle of that transportation corridor kind of planning talk. But I think we need to hit this really hard and make sure that we all understand the impact of these design decisions on the city and the trade-offs between, honestly, the trade-offs between getting to Walmart 30 seconds faster and having, aggressive driving and noisy streets. And there is a trade-off there, and it's always going to be a balance. But I think we have to really start becoming more forceful on this issue.
Very good. We'll turn over to the chief and Debbie, and thank you, Councilman Rassleiter, for that reminder that the focus here is on the extreme behaviors of speeding and noise. We're all guilty. That's what the statistics show of speeding. But that's not what we're going to talk about tonight. We're looking at the extreme behaviors. So with that, Council or Chief St. John.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Good evening. On behalf of Director Mailing and our respective staffs, we did do some additional work on the initiative as presented. What I presented to you in the packet is really a reiteration of what our initial strategies were. Director Mailing will follow up with some of her things. But what I wanted to follow up with is, since that initial report on what it is our action plans were, we have conducted several traffic studies or speed studies, if you will. We have done that independently. Director Mailing staff made it pretty clear that they didn't want the PD speed trailer anywhere close to where they were conducting numbers, because it's kind of like if you have a woodpecker problem, you put the plastic owl out. People pay attention to it for a little while, so it skews what they were looking at. And I think you will see that with our numbers. So what I provided for our speed survey was a couple locations out in the Heights and one random off of Shiloh. We can talk about those numbers a little bit. Second of all, what we wanted to do was amend our noise ordinance, a city ordinance. The state statute is very inhibitive, requires a lot of prep work, requires us to be there with noise meters, the whole 9 yards. The amendment to our existing ordinance, which is currently specific to loud or amplified stereos, will give the officers a unilateral ability to say that's too loud and write a citation based off of that, and we can talk about that as we go. Second of all, goes to a conversation I had with council member about the problems out in a parking lot off of Grand and King Avenue. The proprietor there says the property was posted, and it is. However, that's under MCA, and there's requirements if we're going to trespass anybody. For those of you who are around when we had the cruising problem out on 24th, prior to that downtown, we have a city ordinance which allows officers to write citations for anybody who is in a parking lot for anything other than conducting business or dropping or picking up people. That is portable. So it's not just exclusive to any of the 24th. We can take it out to any other property. Obviously, we want to ask the proprietor if they want it there. But certainly that gives the officers leverage to move people along, and we don't have to give them 2 shots about you're warned, next time we catch you here, you're going to get yourself arrested. So we have that. And then third, Mr. Kukulski had a conversation with some of our legislators regarding the dislike for the ability to enforce traffic with some of our technology, specific cameras. Obviously, we know that it is illegal for red light cameras specifically. However, there's an idea out there to utilize that technology to write warnings. So we still get people identified, bringing the problem to their attention. However, you don't have that monetary issue. Again, it was a non-starter. A couple times we brought it up. Mr. Kukulski can elaborate his conversations. But since that time, those are the things that have been underway. In the packet that I sent you again was the proposed ordinance amendment for the noise. The parking issue is already in there. It's referenced one above, and there was no need to do that. So we know that that's portable, and then the conversation. And so, again, our strategies continue to be enforcement, education, and then obviously there's an engineering aspect to that as well. On the education part, I think that not only do we need to try to educate and convince the violators that what they're doing is not only illegal, but it's inconsiderate, dangerous, all of that type of stuff. I think on the other side of that, the people that are victims of it, if you will. So if we can talk about, really stressing safe driving, be a defensive driver, report anything that you see as quickly and as often as you can. Don't engage in any road rage situations, to try to address it from that end as well. We also want to encourage participation and conversation in neighborhood traffic safety programs, specifically around school zones, obviously, anything that we have going on there. And then I'm sure Director Mailing will reference it. Citizens have every opportunity to weigh in on any roads development, things of that sort, and we would encourage them to do that as well. Mayor, that's what I have for a brief update, those 4 things, and I will turn it over to Director Mailing unless you have questions for me.
I'm sure we will have for you, but let's hear from Debbie and then deal with questions as a package. So, Debbie?
Mayor and Council, thank you. I did not come with strategies. I came with just a bunch of numbers. So my understanding was that we wanted to come tonight and just get an idea of the sense of the issue that we're looking at. And that's, we collected data. I didn't analyze it. I don't believe I ever said I don't think there's a problem. that's up to you guys to look at these numbers tonight. So mine is just a data dump here. So that's what you're getting here. So we picked 3 different areas, and we picked King Avenue West, Shiloh, and Glen Eagles. The reason we picked King Avenue West and Shiloh, even though they're both on the west end, is that they're both very different roads. When you drive Shiloh, it's wide lanes, it's very open, access management, it drives fast. King Avenue West has a lot of traffic control. We have signals. It's narrow. We've got trees. We've got medians. We've got turn lanes. And so we wanted to see what kind of difference it would make. Again, I'm focusing on excessive speeding. I'm looking at those really, who's using this to drag race at night is what I was trying to look at. So the reason we looked at King and Shiloh again was because they're just built really differently. And so we wanted to look at that. So if you look at King Avenue West, and I just highlighted a couple things so you didn't have to, wow, that's small over there, isn't it? So I'll read these numbers because it's pretty hard to see them, but I picked 65 simply because, again, we're not looking at those people that are speeding 10 miles an hour. We wanted to see how many drag racers do we have? How many people do we have zipping up and down our road? So we picked 65. We have the data. We can run this any way we want to see. Eastbound and westbound on King Avenue, you're looking at 0.1% of people exceeding that in 2019. And then now in 2025, we were at 0.1 and 0.3. So given the amount of traffic on those roads, it's not 1 or 2 cars. Let's see, we're looking at, you guys can probably do the math quick with those numbers there, but we're looking at about 80 cars eastbound and 163 westbound. And that is for a 7-day period is what we had on these. So, all right, the next one is Glen Eagles. And Glen Eagles, we picked, again, residential, a little bit lower speed, still built relatively wide, but we wanted to kind of see what we could see here. You can see in 2017, the reason I made that blue was because it's interesting to me that it was a little bit higher then. We had a little bit more of those higher speeds in 2017 than we have now. I think part of the reason for that is we've got houses built along there. We didn't used to. So it probably feels a little bit less like you want to race up and down. But these numbers, if you look at the 85th percentile, and if you look at the number of vehicles exceeding these speeds, these are pretty good numbers. I don't want anybody to read me saying, I don't think we have a problem. I'm just saying that compared to a lot of streets, Glen Eagles actually has some pretty good numbers here that we would like to see this in a speed study. Shiloh, you see 1% and 0.1%. It is so interesting. Every study we've done over the years, southbound is slower. I don't know why that is. Southbound is downhill, but for some reason, southbound is a little bit slower than northbound. We looked back in 2022, our results said the same thing, and we were like, I don't know that this is true. It appears that southbound drives a little bit slower. So again, these are pretty, the volume of traffic on that road is enough that you're seeing about 260 vehicles northbound, and it says less than 5 southbound. So we didn't, I'm sorry, wrong time. 572 versus 77 on southbound. So again, it's a pretty long study. Even though it's 1%, it is 572 cars. So, there are 572 people that driving up and down there quickly. I compared King and Shiloh on this just again so that we could kind of see what those 2 roads felt like. It was interesting to me that, how do you get the bottom off? Do you know how to do that? Oh, there it's gone. Good job, Chief. So on Shiloh, you're seeing 1% and 0.1%. On King, you're seeing 0.1% and 0.3%. So definitely different between the 2. I know when I drive King, it feels, personally, I think it feels less inviting to speed, but that's just me, and maybe I'm looking at different things than most people. So this is for what it's worth. So the next thing I wanted to add, this is not about excessive speeding. This is really about the traffic speed. And I added this, and I really thought, okay, should I not add this because the conversation we're having tonight is more about that, 20 miles an hour and over. But I added it because, the mayor asked a question about it this morning, and I thought it's interesting if nothing else. So the National Highway Traffic Traffic Safety Administration did a study of 700 locations throughout the country, and this is the result. So most of these, major arterials, you can look at nationally, about 59% of people exceed the speed limit. 36% by greater than 5 and 18% by greater than 10. We are significant. Well, Shiloh, we're bumping right up there on that national average. On every other street, we are significantly below what the national average is. I offer that just as a data point because the mayor asked me for this. So let's see. Now this, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I just want to understand, are we talking apples to apples here, or is the national result all roads? Because I would imagine people exceed 10 miles an hour on a highway more than they would inside of a city.
So as you can see below, I did the limited access, which is more of an interstate type. And so, and those are, a lot of people speed on interstates, it turns out. So they were major arterials and minor arterials. And so they did classify them according to the type of street. They do have it broken down, and I'm happy to send you this study by urban versus rural. And you can kind of see where those break down. I didn't want to, we could go down a rabbit hole for days if we go too far. So it's a combination, I think, of different types of streets. Okay, so this is a heat map of speeds. So up above, these are anybody going faster than the speed limit. This is on Shiloh Road. Any car going faster than the speed limit, it shows basically the darker the red, the more vehicles are driving faster than the speed limit. Down below is driving faster than 65. So again, somewhat interesting that we've got people late for work, it looks like. We've got people really excited to go home. On Saturday night at 11 until 1, it looked like we had 10 trips. There was definitely a race that night. So I think you can probably see that over there. There's 6 at 11 p.m. on Saturday and then 4 at 12 p.m. on Sunday. So you can see looks like there was maybe something going on that night. So this is, again, just a way of visually kind of seeing where these speeds lay out a lot during the day. Obviously, a lot more cars during the day, but you can kind of see where those high speeds are. And then I'm going to go into noise data. Do you want to talk about speed before we go to noise, or should I just present the noise as well?
Go ahead with
Okay.
noise.
So we have a noise monitor out at Shiloh Road, kind of by Faith Chapel. And so we collected, there's about 250,000 data points for this time period of Thursday the 13th through Monday the 24th. So that was 10 days. It collects data about every 5 seconds on average. And this is what we got. I did show noise levels here because I wanted to kind of tell you why I picked the levels I picked to compare. A motorcycle is at 100 decibels. That's about what a motorcycle runs. So I used that 100. Traffic during the day, so city traffic is 85 decibels. So just a normal day, people driving, you've got 85. Those motorcycles are running about 100. So these are the counts that we have, what we considered excessive. So greater than 90, which is 85 being kind of that background traffic noise. You've got greater than 90, greater than 95, and then I went to greater than 100. We have 7 instances over 10 days of greater than 100. You can see those max numbers over there on the right-hand side. Some days we didn't get over 100. It looks like 4 days we did, 5 days. Again, I did kind of a heat map here of the times. So over 80 is not that interesting. It's obviously our high traffic times. Over 90, you're starting to get into that higher noise. Again, obviously a lot during those higher traffic times. This is the interesting slide. I think you've got over 95, again, quite a few during the day, a few at night, and then over 100 all during the day. So I'm not sure if we just, in the 10 days we were out there, I would say that this is obviously a very small sample set. It's one location, 10 days. This is the data that I had. So this is what you have. So the monitor monitors continuously. It doesn't just monitor when something happens. So it picks up every couple seconds. It takes a reading. It won't trigger. If the car horn hits in between you wouldn't hear it. Now, a motorcycle you can hear for long enough that I figured we'd pick them up. So this is not a perfect, it's what we had. We had a noise monitor out there that we can run it takes a reading every few seconds. So that's what we had. After our conversation tonight, when we decide what we want to do, what kind of resources we want to put on this, then we'll have to make those kind of decisions of how do we collect more information. So this is what we have on noise, and that is what I have totally for the information.
Okay, very good. Anything else, Chief or Debbie, before we just ask the council what questions they have? Doesn't look like it. So we start over here this time. Should we start over there and go that way? Councilor Gillick?
Haven't formulated all my thoughts yet, but I can tell you that various parts of town, people wake up at night, myself included, and there's really loud noises. And so maybe like a traffic during the daytime when you have a more continuous din, that could be 85 decibels, is different than in the middle of the night, something coming by at 85 or 100 decibels. My wife makes the point that you certainly wouldn't want your surgeon waking up in the middle of the night, not getting a good night's sleep before you were to see the surgeon. I mean, it's just really incumbent for our community to be able to have a good night's sleep. That's not talking anything about all of the carnage that can happen in the streets, that does happen in their streets. The reasons we need to have surgeons actually in our community as well. So a few opening thoughts.
Very good. And we want our council members to get a good night's sleep so they make good decisions too. Councilmember Gillick. Councilmember Rupsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple questions. Chief, is it possible to have a citizens volunteer group that could be trained by BPD to collect data, whether it's video recordings, audio recordings, notes, radar, that kind of stuff, and provide that to BPD so officers can initiate a citation based on that? Again, they'd have to be trained and all that kind of stuff. This wouldn't be just random people off the street, but could we have a citizens volunteer group that could do that?
I don't see why not. It'd be, again, be a third party gathering information. Our officer would do the enforcement. If it were to go to court, then the evidence collectors would have to be the one to testify. So certainly doable.
I imagine we might have a few people that would be interested in volunteering for that. We could think about that and make sure that that's legal. That might be something to consider to help with, the burden on officers. A lot of people might not like this. Could we, based on citizen complaints, put out temporary road lane closures and just say, we're taking this down until due to complaints on noise and speeding and aggressive driving. And for the next 2 weeks, we're going to go down, to 2 lanes on Shiloh or whatever road. And then hopefully when it comes back, we don't have that problem anymore. We look at programs like that.
You looking at me?
I'm looking at anybody who will respond. I know you'd be fine with that, right? But I mean, Debbie, obviously there would be, some impact to the speed getting through a corridor if we did something like that. But might we be able to retrain in some minds if we were to do that?
So I think that's the most similar to having a construction project. So I think Broadwater's a good example this year. We had construction on there. People drove very slow all summer. And as soon as we took the cones down, I think people resumed their typical activity.
Certainly they knew that was a temporary kind of thing, right? And
Right.
it wasn't in response to citizen complaints, neighborhood complaints, those types of things. But as part of that kind of re-education of respect your neighbors and could that be something we could consider?
I don't think it will have any effect on the people that are causing the issues. They're going to do what they're going to do regardless of what we put up. Director Mailing makes a good point. If we make Shiloh bristling with traffic calming and speed bumps, they're going to go down Monad. Find other ways to go. And so again, yeah, do what we can do. Targeted enforcement, going to our study, when you look at things, we can certainly see on some that I didn't report to you that the speed approaching our trailer was significantly lower than going away. And so the Reader's Digest there is officer presence will deter some of this. And so again, it's getting people out, being visible, being active, enforcement. Before the mayor asked me the question, because I heard he might, in 2024, we issued 20,481 citations or warnings, and to date this year, 15.7. And so enforcement is there. We can do better. And obviously, it's getting officers to the problem areas, being visible, taking enforcement actions on those individuals. You know, as far as making everybody pay the penalty because there's a problem area, I just don't know if that's going to affect any of the people that are causing the issues.
All right, so I just want to make sure I understood that right. You said in this year of high visibility enforcement, our citations are down by 40%.
I said that.
Isn't that what you just said? It was 20.
No, oh, to date. So in 2024, total was
24,000.
Yeah, 20,000, and to date this year.
I thought you said 24,000.
The year was
2024.
2024. I apologize.
2025 right. To date 15.7.
Okay. I apologize, Chief.
Can I?
Have we ever looked at speed activated signals?
Speed activated signals as far as like if a speed is certain high, it would flash a red or something, or are you talking?
As in it would trigger a red light or something ahead of you, so then everybody would have to stop and wait for the jerk that was speeding because that person sped.
So I've never looked into that. We have so many signals that are warranted due to, you know, safety issues and volume and that sort of thing that I think that's what we've prioritized. I've never heard of that. I'd have to look at that, see if that's something. If I could point out one of the things that, to your point about enforcement, I think where the data can be super useful is for us to go find those places where we're seeing these things. There's, like I said, 572 vehicles that were driving over 65 miles an hour. That's not a small number. It's a small percentage, but it's not a small number. So we now know between this hour and this hour in this location, this is what we have. Now, if he enforces it every Saturday night, they're going to go somewhere else. But if we can find through some data collection where some of these places are and when we're seeing this, I think then we really can use enforcement at the best, you know, at most effectively. So that's just how I see some of this working with him.
Very good.
I've got more, but
we'll come around. Hopefully later. Councilor Rogers. Yeah.
So your numbers do seem a little down from last year on the number of citations. Are your community service officers able to write citations at all?
They do on accidents, Councilmember.
On accidents, that's what I was thinking.
And please be aware that you know, number one, we're not quite through, or these numbers are through November of 25, and I have a whole bunch that haven't been entered into the system.
Oh, okay, so we may be right on.
And so that the numbers will be a bit higher. I think they'll be consistent with 2024. Just out driving around, listening, I've heard a significant increase in traffic stops and things of that sort. So pleased with that effort. Again, you know, the other thing too is directly correlated to the number of officers. We're down, we're down 7. We're going to have higher coming up here pretty quick. But for the time period we're talking about, we were down 14, primarily out of patrol. And so there goes your proactive, or the opportunities to engage in proactive when again, you're trying to run from call to call to call. And so we're getting those numbers back up. The proactive, which includes traffic enforcement, will increase. You know, that like Director Mailing said, we target the problematic areas. We had a very successful program out on Shiloh early in the summer. It was labor intensive and it was expensive. It involved unmarked cars, it involved drones, it involved numerous officers to primarily get the motorcycles who's causing the problems. But we got a couple and it made a difference. Also, please be aware that in October, the new felony eluding law went into effect. And so now if somebody runs on us and we catch up with them later, it's a felony. It's not going to see Judge Kolar anymore. So again, we have some tools available to us, which will be helpful. If we can get the things I proposed in ordinance, again, more tools. It's not the panacea, but it will help the officers take care of issues right then, as opposed to, why don't you wait a second? I need to get an ambient reading of the noise, and then you can ride your motorcycle by and I'll see if it's too loud. That's where we're operating under on the noise situation. So we have a tool that just can go by and say, "Oh, that's too loud." Then that's what the ordinance allows. So that's an example of what it is we're trying to accomplish with that ordinance.
I would like to encourage you something that if my 18-year-old daughter's watching this, she's going to be very upset about, but please encourage your officers not to give warnings. These kids need tickets. And I realize that may hit me in the pocketbook, but these kids need tickets and it could save their lives. And I'm not saying that your officers are doing anything that they shouldn't be at all, but I mean, we've all been given that warning and whew, I escaped it, and it makes you just a little bit sassier next time. So I would just write them up.
Point taken, council member, just a brief glance at here. It's about a 50-50 split and 24 for that. And again, I mean, I understand what our goal is here is to, I mean, we want people to obey the law. We want them to do it voluntarily. We're not writing tickets to generate revenue. So we want to educate people. We want voluntary compliance. Some people need to be cited. 100% agree with you. So the thing that I would be afraid of is that if all of a sudden it comes down from above that we have a zero tolerance and we'll be not writing any warnings, then I'm afraid we're not going to get a lot of citations either. So just one of those cultural things. But point taken.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor Owen. And Councilor Tidswell, if at any time you would like to ask questions, just put up your hand. Councilor Owen.
Have either of you given thought, besides some of the things we've discussed, do you see changes in statute, state statute necessary to improve the tools that you have?
I don't, I would think there are some. I don't want to overstate in fairness to Daniel and Katie Zolnikoff, but Kevin and I did meet and with them as Daniel's reputation of kind of championing not using technology for invasion of privacy, ticketing, things of that nature. Yet, I would say the conversation was encouraging relative to further conversations about the motive, and the motive not being just to nail anybody who drives over the speed limit. But can we use technology? Can we change some laws? Figure out how to deal with things that are causing true unsafe environments for our community. And they were open to that conversation and looking around the country to find out, are there things out there that are being used that the red light camera thing got shut down right away, but that they would be open to saying, yeah, we are open to conversations about how to improve safety and being a part of that in the next legislative session. So again, it's not as if those two control what goes on, but they were two local legislators who took the time to meet with us, welcomed the conversation, and engaged in options.
But we haven't looked at anything else in terms of like different consequences or different standards for warrants or any of that kind of stuff?
No, part of that conversation was thinking about multiple offenses. I mean, that was one idea that came up, that, first offense kind of thing, people make mistakes, but you being the fourth time, now with technology again, this is an habitual problem with that driver, that license or whatever, maybe there are ways to deal with those. Again,
Okay. Chief, do you know how many jurisdictions in Montana have something like a community service CSO, a non-sworn officer?
I don't exactly. I think maybe one or two.
Okay.
Great Falls, maybe.
So this is not common like what we have
No,
here?
it's not, and certainly not to the capacity that we have. We have 10
Yeah.
CSOs,
Right.
a very robust program, and if Mr. Kukulski would allow, I'd have more because they are worth their weight.
So do you see any value in maybe advocating for them to have some authority in terms of like writing speeding tickets or other sort of civil violations-ish?
Council member, the thing I would need to be very mindful of is they're not sworn officers. I do not want to put them in a position
Of
that,
approaching a
that could
vehicle.
be dangerous. So we don't send them to in-progress calls. They don't handle DUIs. They're basically, pretty benign on what they're doing. However, they can go investigate a property damage accident and issue a citation.
I'm curious though, and this might be a really bad idea, and I hope it's okay that we just throw out bad ideas and get feedback. If the issue with a red light camera is it's sort of the invasion of privacy, right? You're sticking technology up there and issuing without any actual human being a part of it. Could CSOs be a part of it? Could we use a red light camera to document the offense, issue the ticket, and have it witnessed by a non-sworn officer who could then testify to the events?
Absolutely.
And would that violate state statute?
Well, the statute says you cannot have a red light.
Cannot use them at all. So it's not that they're not witnessed by a human, it's that they exist. that is our
Cannot use
problem.
technology to enforce traffic.
Okay.
One of the comments was that I was going to turn the camera and look into somebody's bathroom. That's what one of the comments was.
Yikes.
I'm going, yes, you caught me. That's what I was going to do. But that's what the prevailing thought was at the time. And so a couple times we broached it. It was a non-starter. Now Mr. Kukulki, over here. So Iflin, go.
Okay, and then my last question, although you might get some follow-ups to what you just said, I'm hearing some muttering over here. Obviously, we're going to need a multi-pronged strategy to address any of this. We'll have to do multiple things. Debbie, do we have any thoughts about sort of noise dampening infrastructure or, sort of strategies? Yes, we want to change behavior and yes, we want compliance, but also you're going to have, ambulance sirens and people honking horns for safety and legitimate reasons that we're running at higher decibels. Have we looked at all at some of the options for noise dampening?
Yes, and it goes completely in conflict with the way we're looking at building along roads. So most of the conversations we've had, and I know Wyeth is back there, he might have something to say here, but the way that you slow people down and the way that you create more of a feel on some of these roads is instead of it being backyards with big privacy fences, you have front yards. So you drive, Elysian's a great example. All of those are front doors and it's a much better drive. It feels like a better street. It's a better experience. If you start putting up noise walls everywhere, you're going to have a big, tunnel of road. Speeding's going to go up. You might not hear things, but it's going to be pretty. I don't know. Desolate is the word.
Yeah.
You'd also have it pretty high for any. You have to have that noise wall pretty high to get up to where it would divert the sound from, like Shiloh Crossing. Shiloh Commons is so tall that you wouldn't be able to get anything tall enough to dampen the noise for that.
And
really.
are noise walls the only technology that's out there? Some sort of like hard surface?
You can use trees, you can use, landscaping, that sort of thing. They're not as effective. But yeah, true noise tools they're typically not very friendly to or attractive. The last question about can we use technology? Yes, we can use technology, and I think we should. Again, to the point where we can help enforcement to figure out where to be at the right time. We can put cameras, we can put permanent speed sensors. We can put permanent noise sensors, and we can start seeing what the typical people don't do this once and then they're gone. They're there. Hey, let's meet every Saturday night at 1 or whatever that is. So we can use technology to find the best locations for them to be in. So I do think technology is important.
Good, Councilor Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I have a few questions for you. I was surprised to see the speed reports, and I know St. Andrews there, I think at 92, but it was unsubstantiated, so it may have not have really been 92 miles an hour.
Yeah,
there.
correct. We think that was a lawnmower, but, the motor, but anyway,
And,
it
okay.
picks up the fan and all that stuff,
Oh,
so,
I see.
but yeah, anomaly.
Okay, good. So you mentioned you did that operation this summer on Shiloh Road. It was very successful. You caught some people. Um, but is there a way, once you catch these people, to actually help them or make them pay for the cost of that so that you can do it more often?
Council member, that would come from the court.
Okay.
We have
So there's
nothing
no
to,
city fine that we can pay for using your, the police services to have to go through all this once they're convicted to say, okay, you've been convicted now. Now this is the fine you pay.
you know, I would have to defer to, city attorney over there. I'm not sure if we're allowed, I know we can't, but it would come from the court to charge people to fund our operation. Other agencies do that, I know, so they get their citation money to fund a project.
For instance, fire, someone starts a forest and fire, or fire in the forest, they get, all the expense could be attributed to the individual who started the fire.
Yep,
And so in
understand.
this case, same thing, they've caused this issue, and so we can't then, in city code, fine them for that once they're convicted.
I know for a fact that we request reimbursement when we have property damage, but not for service itself to recoup that,
Okay,
but same concept.
okay. And then, so Debbie, these speed data here you had, these are portable? Were they fairly expensive and technology? Did someone have to go out there and collect all the data? Is that all Wi-Fi sent back to your server?
So the speed data is all with road tubes. So it's somebody lays them out, makes sure they're in the right location, goes and collects the data off of them, checks them a couple times a day, make sure they haven't come loose. So it's pretty manual. The noise is a sensor that we just put out there and then we bring in after a week and download it.
Okay, and how expensive are these if you were to lay these out throughout the whole city or put them out throughout the city to try to find these areas of hotspots where the police can enforce them?
So the tubes themselves are not that expensive. It would be more the personnel to be able to do all that. We can do quite a few areas. I think we have several sets. We can do several roads at the same time, probably, let's say 5 or 6 roads at the same time. So leave them out for a week and then we move them is typically what we do.
Okay.
I don't have a cost on the exact each individual.
To see
one.
this, I think it's very helpful for PD to see these trends of where the violations are occurring. So is it possible that, Chief, this goes back to you, is to, instead of relying on Public Works to do this, is that you have your own division of rotating some of this is where the CSUs can come into play, where they actually put out these sensors, monitor them for a week or a month so they can get a good set of data to say, okay, here's the hotspots, and maybe have them throughout the city in different areas that we know are always hotspots, so that then after the CSU gets that information, can then your force can enforce the actual speeding.
And that's what we do, council member.
But you're using Public Works information? Data? Is that how you
Well,
do
we
it?
use our own. We have, several bumper pull, radar trailers, and we do exactly that as we go.
But I think you said on the radar trailers, they actually notify and they kind of slow the speed and then they speed again.
Oh, sure.
But I'm
Yeah,
talking about,
it's not a road tube.
yeah, I'm talking about what Public Work is using, where they have the road tubes and the sensors of noise, where it actually is capturing the data without the individual, the driver knowing what's going on, that they're actually being monitored. So it actually gives you a better pattern of what is happening in that area. Then you can go enforce it at that point in time.
Yep, that's correct. And that is really the impetus of what the initiative has done. It's got Public Works and PD working together on this, coming at it from similar but different directions.
Right. And so, but it sounds to me like you said, how many do you have of the road monitors?
I think we have 5 or 6 right now.
Which
Yeah.
sounds to me like this is a pretty massive problem when you look at throughout the city, that we probably need more than that to be able to understand not just the speed throughout the city and a lot of these roads, but also the noise. And I think I would like to see something like that to where we can get better reports here, and then you can actually see the trend is after we're monitoring and enforcing to see, well, okay, now these areas that have been all hotspot reds are now, neutralized to this pink or, white, so that's the kind of thing I think is going to show us that we're actually achieving some type of enforcement and betterment of the problem. But that's all I had for now.
Great, Councilman Brett.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier today, we had a conversation with the mayor talking about cameras. And I understand that we can't put cameras on any traffic control device, but we can put a camera on a telephone pole or a light pole. Or put up our own pole that's not directed for traffic. I think that's the word. Have we talked about that at all? I mean, I'd be the first one to go buy a camera for you if that can be done.
The concept has been discussed, but nothing further than that. But to your point, there's some vertical structures out there that you could affix a camera to.
So my thought is, why don't we try something? Do a test of a street or one intersection. Just try something to see what results come up. You don't have to write tickets, but just to see, does it do any good? Can we see who's speeding, who's going through red lights? I mean, to get a better pattern. If we can do it legally, why don't we try to do that? Just a thought.
Yeah, I'd second that completely. I guess my question, real for both of you, will be what can we make sure is accomplished tonight? My greatest concern is we have a great conversation. Everybody's in supportive of doing something. Nothing is fully baked to clarify what that something is. So, but what can we do to make sure this conversation results in something eventually? So specifically, what do each of you want? Debbie, my sense is you want to continue, I'm putting words in your mouth, but you tell me if it's correct. You want us to give you the green light to put the pedal to the metal to continue the data collection effort. Correct me if I'm wrong, correct me if you'd modify that or add anything to it. And then I'll put similar question to the chief. Let's start with Debbie. What do you want from us tonight?
So I think exactly what you said, what we want from you tonight. I mean, this was an initiative that came to us. I came with data tonight because I thought it'd make the conversation better than coming with absolutely nothing. I don't know, everything is resources, everything is priority. And so I don't know how much more information you need to say, okay, we want a concentrated program. We want cameras everywhere. We want 15 more noise monitors that we need to install. So I think what I would like is direction on prioritization for this. Are we throwing everything at it that we've got? Are we, that's my question, because other things will drop to do this, which is fine, but that's why we're here to talk about identifying the issue, talking about how big of a priority this is with everything else we do. It's all just resources.
Okay, and I'll just answer it for myself, not for the whole council, which is that I don't know enough to even go there. You're the expert, you know what the options might be. So what I would personally hope is that you would take it to the next step to refine more specific questions for us or options A, B, or C. My sense is this is not top priority. It doesn't deserve dropping everything else, but it is a priority and it hasn't been in the past, and we need to up our game on it. But I, for one, would like to hear from you what those options might be, and specifically what are the costs to you? What are we giving up? Because at this point, we have no idea what we would be giving up. So if it's free, we'll take it. But okay, and so Chief, same question for you. What do you want for us? What do you think is top priority? My sense is the noise on the noise side, that noise ordinance is worth pursuing because then you'll have some discretion. I would say go forth and tell us more about that at a future work session. But let me, on that issue of that ordinance, just point out one kind of a basic question. It defines something called unreasonable noise. And so that's in the proposed 24,354 definitions section. And that's really important because that's what you're being asked to define or deal with. And there's two options, and there's an or between both of them. And the second one is what you were talking about, something that based on these factors, time of day and how many pedestrians there are around there and things like that, an officer could determine if it would disturb or tend to disturb the peace and quiet of a person of ordinary sensibilities. Very broad, purposefully, lots of discretion there. That's one option, and going to generate some fights, obviously. But then the other option is that it is plainly audible at a distance of 75 feet or more from the vehicle. So plainly audible, 75 feet. I can't imagine a scenario where it would be disturbing the peace, but not plainly audible. If 75 feet is only 25 yards away, if I can hear it, that's the lower standard. So I don't understand why we would have the very discretionary thing when anything that would trigger that discretionary standard would have already been triggered because it was plainly audible at 75 feet. So just something that you need to look at. I don't know that that makes sense. It would make sense if it were and. It's got to be both plainly audible, and then the officer can make this further discretion. So I suspect that that was maybe intended to be an and. That would make sense to me. But back to the bigger question, what do you want from us tonight?
Well, I think, again, direction on where you want to go with this. It sounds like you're not quite sure yet. So in the meantime, I think what I would like to do is continue to gather data on problematic areas, focus on some things. As suggested, we'll accumulate data both from our trailers and from the road tubes, and then put assets there and see what happens. Even if we don't write a bunch of citations, having an officer sitting there, if we go from red to white or pink or whatever, then we know that deterrence is helpful. So again, moving forward, we'll clean up the, what I'm hearing is you're not opposed to the ordinance amendment. Certainly there's going to be some challenges because it's the officer just saying your car's too loud. But we do that now with stereos. You're blowing me out, and everybody's heard them. So they don't have to have a sound meter or whatnot. They can hear it. So same concept as you're talking about. So that would, if you support that, we'll move forward with that and clean it up and bring it back to you. Do want you to, be advised of the portability of the parking lot ordinance, so we can take that anywhere in the city if a business wants that, and then continued conversation there. But in the meantime, drill down on our problematic areas. Wintertime is a little bit difficult, but we know where they're at, and continue to gather data. Doesn't matter how you look at this, it's going to be enforcement, it's going to be education, and it's going to be engineering down the road, potentially. So
Okay, thank you, Councilor Shaw.
Yes, thank you. 2 comments and then one question. Comment, the noise ordinance to me is a no-brainer. Yes, from my perspective, 100% let's move forward with that. Give officers the discretion to be able to make those determinations. Hopefully that will make a difference. Plus, it's not something we have to go to the legislature for. We can do that locally. To Debbie's question, I don't want you to drop everything, but I also agree we don't have enough information on the costs of this to really make an educated decision on how expensive are these tubes? How many would we need in the city? So my perspective is continue gathering the data with the tools we have. But when you come back to us with maybe the next report of that data, give us a cost breakdown on the staff time involved, all of that, because that's the missing piece for me in terms of really being able to give any direction that way. My question is, so Chief, you'd mentioned that with red light cameras, they could potentially be used to write warnings, but is that something that would need a legislative change, or is that something we could do now?
Council member, it would require a legislative change because it prohibits it outright right now.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to be clear on that. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Brasler.
Yeah, I had to wait for the one issue that I really wanted to talk about tonight to start all the way over there. Thanks a lot, Mayor. This is like an old WWF like King of the Ring match where everybody gets in the middle and nobody really knows exactly where we're going, but everybody's got a lot of different ideas. So people are whacking each other with chairs and trying to throw out crazy stuff. It reminds me a lot of the WWF. However, my questions are probably for Gina around fines. You know, when we do cite, like, can we make this hurt? I mean, are there things in our city ordinance for traffic violations that we can change to make the penalties hurt? You know, not a $50 speeding ticket or a $20 speeding ticket, a $250 speeding ticket, like things that hurt. Can we set minimums so that the judges also don't arbitrarily lower, but can we change our ordinances in the way that our fines for these infractions are steep? Is that something that we can do?
Absolutely. They have to stay, to the max is $500, but you can impose mandatory minimums. So we could look at the different ordinances that, whichever ones you're suggesting, we could certainly look at those, but that's within your discretion, council.
That would be the one thing that I'd like from staff as we talk about, you know, the data, and that's all great. And I appreciate that, and coordination between, you know, BPD targeting specific areas. I think that's a smart use of our resources, and I'm glad that you're already doing it and you have been for a long time. The more data that we can equip everybody with to try to be targeted about the limited resources we have, that's all great. But I think that's the other part of this conversation that we need to look at is specifically speeds exceeding, you know, 15 or 20 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. And where is the break line in which we classify that from a regular speeding ticket to reckless? And, you know, how do we address specifically, you know, street racing? Is that instantly a reckless on both parties? Those are the things that I'd like to look at and know what are the fine limits when we're over 15 miles an hour, and how do we set minimums under that 500, you know, max cap that we're allowed statutorily. But let's look at those things, because I think those are also instant changes that we can make to make these things hurt. I agree with Councilwoman Rogers. Like, I got a 15-year-old that's going to start driver's ed, and that kid is going to cost me a lot of money because he is not smart about these types of things yet. And the only way that he's going to get smart is to get whacked with a 2x4 in enforcement like that. And I think that's a real thing for a lot of our, you know, irresponsible folks in this community. And until they have to pay for it, it's not, you know, a $20 speeding ticket when I was 18 was not like, that was great. If I could keep it under the 20 mile an hour cap and pay $20, like, I would do that all the time. So I think we need to make it painful in our community to have these infractions. And those are things that we can do instantly to try to start making a difference and equip our officers and systems better, like right now. So that's one of the things that I'd like to look at and start to see some changes along with the noise ordinance to move this thing along. So that's where I would come.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Kennedy?
Chief, when you talked about the property posted with the MCA codes, 41 years ago, we were living on 24th Street in Cons, and the cars in there. And every time we called, we were told there was nothing they could do. I think if we could follow forward with the properties that want to post theirs and be able to enforce them would help a lot of people. And I would like to see that go forward. I'd also ask you at about 1:30 in the morning on Friday and Saturday nights, I wake up out of a sleep listening to the motorcycle go down Grand Avenue. So how do you deal with that? Are we going to take a call from everyone that, because I could call you at 1:30 every Friday and night, or what do you do? Is it, I used to have a guy call me every time someone used Jake brakes coming down the Zimmerman Trail, and he'd call me up and say, "Hey, Kennedy, can you hear that? I just wanted to make sure that you were awake because I'm awake because of it." I get it that the noise ordinance and what we can do, but how can your officers, and you have enough of them, able to enforce these things? I think they're all good ideas, but the real thing is, are we really able to do some things with the staff you have?
Council member, you are absolutely correct. I would encourage people to call, not me personally, but the non-emergency number, because we need to get these things documented. So again, it goes to building where the problem is, what it is that we're seeing, and then come up with strategies to do that. The other part of it is, you're spot on, is that we don't have enough officers to be everywhere all the time. And we are assuming right now that that motorcycle going up and down Grand is going to stop for a police officer. They don't. And they don't have any identifiers. They have no plates. They're wearing the dark helmets and they take off. Again, we're seeing some tragedies because of that, the fatalities or whatnot. But every conversation that we're having here assumes that said bad driver is going to pull over, or we're going to have an officer there. If we're there, we see it, we'll take enforcement action, but we need to do so professionally and we need to do so prudently. Running people into the ground because they got a loud muffler is not those two. So you make a good point. What I am going to tell you is we're not going to not try. We're going to do what we can with what we have, try to put some of these strategies in place, work with our partners over at Public Works for some of this, and try to get some of it down. But I think everybody here growing up, there's been speeders and crazy drivers in all of our lives. And I don't think it'll change, but how can we, again, get people to tone it down a little bit? As many motorcyclists as we lost a couple of years, I would think that little fraternity primarily would have got the message, but no. You've got 20-something-year-old immortals. And so, we're dealing with that. But that's my answer to you is please call so we can document that we have these issues. We'll have officers respond when we can, and we'll take any enforcement that we can. But I'm not going to tell you we're just going to throw our hands up and not try.
Very good. Thank you. We'll open for public comment in just a minute, but Councilman Rupsis?
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple comments, Chief, specifically on the noise ordinance. I'd like to suggest that maybe it should be a bit more prescriptive on the location enhancers. Like if you're in a residential area, be more prescriptive. Says it's going to double the fine or whatever that fine is. I mean, to Scott's point, let's just be a little more forceful about that. Personally, I'd like to see quiet ride zones on all our arterials that are going through residential neighborhoods. So this would be a combination of, BPD and Public Works. Sign it saying this is a residential zone, fines are doubled, and then give you the enforcement tools. But then also from an engineering standpoint, at least we're just putting that out there and notifying people that this counts for that. I could see that in some very kind of distinct sections throughout the West End, and I'm sure through the rest of the city as well. I think we should specifically state that unless the officer is able to cite the driver directly at the time of the violation, the responsibility for the violation lies with the registered owner of the vehicle. And I don't think that's in the noise ordinance, but it seems to me that, if especially in those cases where they just go away, If you can at least get a plate, they can be cited, and whoever owns that vehicle can be cited for that and maintains the responsibility for that. I think most of the time it's going to be the person that owns it is driving it, but when Scott's kid is out there and Scott owns the car, but we'll find Scott for that. And then lastly, Debbie, I think we need to consider that engineering on the roads should include the enforcement tools and technology to help Chief's department do their jobs, right? So when we're designing Rimrock, let's make sure we're designing in at least the technology tools to help with that enforcement, so that we're not just up to, does Chief have somebody to sit out there along, Rimrock someday and with a radar gun, right? So let's design that in and start using the data that we're collecting or going to collect all over the city and just engineer that into our roads. That technology piece, I think, is important enough that it should be part of that engineering job, not as an afterthought trying to react to where these things have come up. And then last, Debbie, I just ask, do we have any ideas? So much on the West End with the roundabouts. So much of that noise comes from people just gunning it as they come out or even go through that roundabout as they Grand Prix it, around the corner. What can we do from an engineering design standpoint to slow that instinct down and prevent people from just getting to the other side or just gunning it through? That to me sounds like a design or engineering challenge.
So it may seem counterintuitive, but whenever you slow people down or they perceive that they're being slowed down, they make up the time. And so people, I didn't get a red light or I didn't get a green light. I had to slow down at the roundabout and they need to get to the next one fast. I'm not sure how to change that kind of behavior. I don't know that, if we're talking about the people that are kind of racing around there too, I don't know that they want to change their behavior. So I don't know. I hate to keep pointing at Chief St. John, but so much of this is well, so I don't know how to do that. To slow them down further makes them need to make up more time. And so I think the more things we put in people's way, the more they try to overcome that perceived slowdown. It's been shown time and time again on studies that have been done for trying to slow people down. So I think education is a big one. I think there are probably not a handful. I think there's probably a portion of our population that probably doesn't understand that they're adjacent people. And when they do that, it really does impact people's quality of life. We can reach them. I do think we can reach those people. I don't know that we can reach the people that are racing. I don't think that concerns them.
Okay, Councilor Rogers?
I've got two things. One, I would love it if it was just teenagers that are racing and being stupid. I, to my face, have been told by women older than me that they slingshot through those roundabouts. They think it's fun. It's a challenge. There's kids walking through those roundabouts. There's bicyclists going through those roundabouts. There's little old ladies with a pie on the seat beside them going through those roundabouts. That frankly makes me mad to hear that kind of stuff, but that's people's nature. They're in a car and they feel fast and they want to do the thing. So I feel for you that what you're trying to say, and weren't you sharing earlier that the traffic on King was every bit as fast as the traffic on Shiloh, despite the traffic calming? So
The data showed, that though they're both 4 lanes and they're in the same side of town, Shiloh had like 38% of drivers over the speed limit, but King had like 8%.
So I can pull this back up here. I think it made a difference at certain speeds. It does not make a difference at that excessive speed. So yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. I apologize for that. And then my other question is just for Chief. Do our officers now have the approval and authority to chase and apprehend the motorcyclists, the speeders, people like that? And are they held, are they indemnified for their actions if something happens?
I'll give you the Gina answer. It depends. Uh, we don't pursue unless there's a compelling need, and a simple traffic infraction for speeding or running a red light or even a DUI does not necessarily trigger that. But if they have a compelling need and they can articulate, then they can pursue.
What would constitute a compelling need if a DUI and speeding does not?
Well, generally, it's, usually there's a victim in the car, there's some sort of felony has taken place, or, but running a red light or a traffic, regular traffic violation, where a car or motorcycle doesn't stop for you without any other information, that is not a compelling need.
What do we have to do to change that? I mean, I would feel that would be a huge frustration for the officers who are clearly seeing. I mean, I'm sure it is for you as well, but can you kind of explain the thought process behind that?
Well, to your first question, it's my policy that we have a restricted pursuit. It's liability exposure. It is making sure, again, we're doing things properly and professionally. We have been, going back in my career, there has been several pursuits that have ended in tragedy. You've had citizens, innocent citizens killed, being hit by officers chasing them. I would reference you to Helena last week. Highway Patrol pursuing a drunk driver drove through a T intersection into a house and killed a sleeping individual. And I'm not saying that they weren't justified in chasing. I'm just saying that we need to be very, very careful when we engage in a pursuit because nothing good happens. And usually the bad guy doesn't get hurt. It's innocent people who are in the intersection when they come barreling through there. We allow them to pursue. We most definitely do. And we've even given them tools to end a pursuit. But we are very, very careful on when they do that. So again, safety, what's prudent, and then the liability exposure.
Council, let's try to wrap up. It's almost 8 o'clock. I'll recognize Councilor Nees, Councilor Gulick, and let's open up for public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, real quick on the ordinance that you've given to us, is this a red line version or is this completely new?
Red line version, I asked help from City Attorney's Office. Todd Korn's the one that drafted it, but it is built off existing 24-341.
Okay, so it's not red line, so we don't see what we're changing in the red line version. So
correct, yeah.
Okay, so I would actually ask that we, Chris, that we see a red line version of this so we understand what we're changing on this before we decide. I agree that we need to make this more robust, but I think we need to see a red line version so we know what we're changing.
Certainly can get that. I would tell you the red line is an addition, all the new verbiage, everything else stayed the same, just different numbers, but we will get that for you.
Okay, Councilor Gulick?
Following up on TJ's question, I guess, it's obviously, I totally understand the policy for all the reasons, but it also creates an environment where people are incentivized to flee rather than to deal with the consequences, and that's the issue. There's no consequences, and so, but if they can catch the license plate before they flee, I mean, what happens then?
And then we follow up on the registered owner.
Okay. It does seem to me then I know that our legislative committee has worked last session, and I just like to see us redouble our efforts with our legislative delegation because the different kinds of red light cameras or speed cameras can, there's not a pursuit that occurs there. There are consequences that happen then. It's a much safer way of dealing with the whole situation. Yeah, I think right now we're just enabling lawlessness because there aren't any consequences. And I think to Scott's point, I think, you know, we got to have rapidly escalating. You know, maybe if the initial one ticket, if it'll actually, if officers are less likely to issue tickets because it's so high, I mean, I think the escalating piece is maybe important. We want to get repeat, but we want the initial one to be enough to hurt as well, $50 at least, I would say. So I appreciate bringing the staff's bringing forward the noise ordinance. I guess one other piece, most of the noise we're talking about, we're assuming that it's people are speeding as well. That is a big issue, but there are also jackasses who just like attention and just really gun their motors and they're not speeding as well. And so it seems like this ordinance would also address that, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Okay, let's open it for public comment. Is there any public comment on item 2? Probably know the routine. We just ask for comments to keep to 3 minutes and a name, please.
Thank you. I'm Council Member-elect Tony O'Donnell, who in 5 weeks will be succeeding, not replacing, Councilmember Rupsis. I just wanted to emphasize that I will be continuing this quest for some type of noise abatement or on Shiloh, and that Councilmember Rupsis lives on the west side of Shiloh, about 100 yards, I guess, from Shiloh. However, my bedroom is right on Shiloh, and I hear that. One thing that was curious to me, when the difference between 85 decibels to 100 decibels, I don't know if that's a linear straight line thing, but from my bedroom, it's 2 to 3 times, because they come out of that roundabout and they gun it from there. And I think that one of the things in terms of the license plates is that I've heard that on motorcycles, first of all, they're going very fast, and those license plates are very small. And these guys, most of them are wearing helmets. I don't know how in the world. I think it's a replay of Catch Me If You Can type of thing. I think the chief mentioned that they challenge the cops, on the whole thing. So I don't know how it's really solvable. I would suggest also, in terms of the quiet zones and residential areas, that a special attention be paid to our senior residences, especially those that have memory care facilities, that are some hospital or any type of hospital zone applications on that thing that might be useful on that. But I think we've given the chief a couple of great tools here just to watch out for Councilmember Rogers and Aspenlighter's kids.
Yeah.
I think that you've done him a favor by making his job easier. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Further public comment.
Kevin Nelson, 4235 Bruce Avenue. I go all the way back to, man, I don't know when this was. I think it was in 13. Review of City Billings Noise Ordinance by Dan, somebody from Montana Tech. None of you are here, but you did take it up. I don't know if much happened. I guess on the noise ordinance, the thing I'm wondering is, under C, it says plain yellow of a distance of 75 feet from a vehicle between the hours of 10 and 7. So why is it unreasonable at midnight, but not unreasonable at noon? What about the people that sleep every day? I think you ought to take that out. One of the things I think that's going back in that I think was taken out is vehicle's original manufacturer specification, because I think that came out of the ordinance maybe back in 13, and now it's going back in. So with that back in the ordinance, why do you even have to wait for them to stop? Why don't you just pull them over? Because if they modified the equipment design or used increased noise output beyond the original manufacturer specification, seems to me that's probable cause to pull them over and cite them. We spent all this time worried about red light cameras. Hell, these guys, they can't wait for the red light, especially if they're the first ones on the line. They're the biggest problems. I mean, how many have we sat there and just a race down because they're the first ones off the line? In typical fashion of this council, you spent more time worrying about other things than the actual ordinance itself. And the ordinance is aggressive driving and noise. It isn't the speeding that bothers everybody. It's this constant noise or this momentary noise of acceleration that we hear all over town and everyone hears it, and that's the problem. It isn't so much the speeding or the traffic design. You know, I made a records request for mufflers. So in 18 months, there were 3 warnings, and not one ticket was written for illegal mufflers in the city of Billings. But I'm not gonna dump it all on the chief. You know, it isn't the chief. The sheriff, he didn't do any better. Highway Patrol doesn't do any better. I think this is an effort that needs to have everyone involved. So all agencies are getting the same message and enforcing the same criteria, because I think you'd have a better effect, because you just can't dump it on the chief and say, hey, this is your problem, you fix it, because I think it's a broader issue. So I'm glad you're having the conversation, and maybe we can move forward, because I think everyone's frustrated with just that noise that Mr. Kennedy worries about. Of course, I'm not like Mr. Kennedy. I take drugs per night to sleep. Prescription. But I get woke up at 5:30 in the morning with the guy that ripped through the neighborhood. So, you know, I'm getting up in the morning. Mr. Kennedy gets up in the evening. So, but at least we're in the same, sort of in the same thing. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Any other public comment on item number 2?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, Paul Clark, Southside. Have any of you heard, and of course you have, America the Beautiful? US 66, New Mexico. When you go out of a roundabout near Albuquerque, you've got to be doing 35 miles an hour, but the vibration, the rumble stripe, the song America the Beautiful comes. It makes you slow down to hear the song. There are a lot of people, senior citizens, myself included, I love to hear the song America the Beautiful. Now, that requires, I'll name the company, Sandbar Construction out of New Mexico. Another town is Lancaster, California. They have the same thing. I don't think it's America the Beautiful. It might be Red Communist Comrades. I don't know. Anyway, but it's an idea, you guys. You're talking about noise. Sound of noise. What's better than music? America the Beautiful. Peace out.
Very good. Any other public comment on item number 2? Any other public comment? No one's standing up, no one's coming forward. We'll close the public comment period. I'll just comment to Mr. Nelson's comment. It's Dan Ottenreith, who is the professor at Montana Tech, who the city hired in 2019 to work on the rewrite of the regular noise ordinance, not the motor vehicle ordinance. So that's just a good source. A lot of these rely on expertise, so I'm sure if he's still around, he might be a very good source. Council, this is such a big item. We could talk about it all night. We don't want to do that. I don't know exactly where we're sending staff. I'm hesitant to ask for any sort of a motion for fear that'll trigger an hour and a half of conversation. My sense is there is a consensus that we want to do more, and we want to send the chief and Debbie forth to figure that out. But I'm not sure we want to give them a really specific direction, because I'm not sure exactly what that is. Are we good enough with that, or do you want to give staff more direction than just go figure it out, come back to us with whatever you think the next step is? Councilmember Ripsis, this is your baby.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be here to vote for it, but please bring the noise ordinance back. At least give yourself the tool to handle that. Like I said, I think there are a couple little tweaks that I think would be useful, but if I know when it's on the agenda, I will certainly be here to speak in support of it. Thank you.
Noise ordinance, Councilor Aspeler.
Yeah, Chris, if you could add to that list a review of our fine structure with reckless driving and speeding, for us to take a look at as well at a future agenda. I think that that's something I would like to see in concert with the noise ordinance. Doesn't have to be tied together for one to slow the other down, but I think if we're going to take an ordinance package, that those two could and should fit together. So I'd like to have that information also, so we can have a discussion with the new council about fine structure.
I would add to the list just data collection on hotspots areas in the discretion of Debbie, except if there are resource issues that she can come back to us and ask how broad of a scope do we want. Chris?
So the 5 buckets I have, mandatory minimums, look into that. I didn't hear anyone speak against the idea of dealing with the noise ordinance as a tool. Data analyst is the 3rd bucket I have. That helps both, helps improve design and helps improve the efficiency of enforcement. I would remind us design matters. Think about that both in the roads that we have, if there's any tweaking or adjusting, or remember, we have another 30,000 people moving to town over the next 20, 30 years, and we got a lot of roads to build. So how we build them matters. Enforcement. How do we use technology and lean into the legislative process as well as our own ways to use technology and that data to help with traffic enforcement, knowing. So those are the 5 kind of buckets of areas that I have for us to follow through on.
Councilmember Denise?
Yeah, I guess I would ask Debbie or Chief, did we miss anything as far as those 5? I think you mentioned something about parking lots, enforcement, no trespassing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Is it? Okay. Is there anything else that you guys talked about that you think we should pursue? Because I didn't really see anyone object to any of the ideas that you presented.
No, I think that's it. We'll, like I said, I thought this was kind of just an opener to discuss the issue and how we wanted to proceed. So we'll start, or we'll continue collecting more data and feeding it your way, and we'll see if we can find effective ways to kind of do that and then report back.
Yeah, I was really interested in how Councilmember Rupsis talked about enforcement design in the roadway. I'd like to see how that actually works and plays out. So that would be interesting.
I would throw something in for our legislative committee to think about as they look at all these issues, including technology and cameras. I had a conversation with the chief today in which he mentioned the legislative prohibition on evaluating law enforcement based on quotas of the number of citations that they issue. And that came into vogue around the country 20 years ago or something like that. I think most of us realize that the pendulum has now swung to a point where it's very difficult for the chief to hold officers accountable for any sort of standard of writing citations. And we just don't see as many of them. And that seems wrong. And so there's got to be something in the middle there where you're not stuck with hard and fast quotas, but also we can still use that as a clear element of officer performance. I don't know what the solution is there, but I just wanted to highlight it, especially for our legislative committee going forward. Anything else before we call this one a wrap? I don't see anything else. So item number 2, Councilmember Rupsis, thank you for bringing this important issue forward. Chris, next item is highlighting future agenda items. Is there anything you wanted to call attention
$500 million CIP on Monday's agenda for review and adoption. Or the last 2 meetings of the year are both action meetings and then off for Christmas break. So.
Very good. Council discussion. Any items with general council discussion? Public comment on non-agenda items. Anything that was not on our agenda tonight that there's public comment on? Any further public comment on non-agenda items? No one is coming forward, so we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving, by the way.